Hello, everyone. The number to call is 866-888-5720. Oh, sorry, wait, that's my wrong pledge drive brain this week. Thanks so much for coming out to the NoHo Arts District tonight. I am the arts education reporter, and I have the unique opportunity of covering how schools are teaching the arts, the programs that are facilitating them, the teaching artists, going around Southern California talking to students, talking to parents, talking to teachers. And the reason I thought of this event is because in a lot of those interviews, I keep hearing about this whole starving artist thing. And I talk to parents who may be supportive of their child's dream, but they're concerned about this whole starving artist thing. Or a teacher who wants to recruit kids for her class into a program, but the whole starving artist thing. And then at the same time, I hear a lot about the creative economy and about how many jobs in Southern California are connected to the arts. So I wanted to kind of fuse those narratives together, examine the myths, examine the reality, and that's what this event is going to be about. And we're going to start off with a guest that I'll bring up in just a second, and I just want to remind people that you can also connect with us on Twitter for those of you in the audience and in the viewing audience, at KPCC in person, and we're using the hashtag ArtsLife, as Charlotte just mentioned. Our first guest that I'm going to bring up now is Adriana Arambula. She is a creative director at the Justice Design Group. Adriana, come on up. And we're going to hear a little bit more about what she does in just a moment.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. It's bright.
So in talking about, some of the myths, I wanted to talk to someone who was an artist involved in the arts, involved in one of these jobs in the creative economy, as we hear, and we're going to talk a lot more about that later tonight. But I wanted to talk to you, starting with when did you first start thinking about a career in the arts?
So I was introduced to really careers in the arts and extended education in the arts really through a nonprofit arts program called Reimagining. And when I was in high school, I was kind of on the fast track to be a doctor. I wanted to go pre-med, and so I was taking all of my biology courses and anatomy, physiology, all of that good stuff. And, wanted to get into college, so I took an AP art course. And my instructor in that course sat me down one day and said, what we're going to do is special assignment. She set up a still life for me and sent it in to Ryman Arts, and I got accepted to this program. And so suddenly there I was on my weekends, spending my Saturdays coming out to LA. I was on the USC campus at the time, and getting this wonderful arts education from college level arts professors. And it was a combination of things, of being on, a college campus, of being on, in LA at the time it was a time of development. It was around 2003, 4. So they were building the Walt Disney Concert Hall, and there was lots of development happening in Los Angeles. And it really just exposed me to just a different world around me. And from there, I kind of decided that I wanted to, because of all of the development, wanted to go into architecture. And so it sort of, it introduced me to a different world that I, didn't even know that I was interested in.
So architecture, different than a doctor,
different
than that path that you were on. What was, a lot of times you hear about family support in terms of going down a more artistic path. What was that like?
I mean, my family was supportive of me regardless. When I expressed, from a child really, that I wanted to go to college, that I was going to go to college, they kind of said, yeah, absolutely great, that's what you should do, but they didn't know how to get me there. So I was sort of, doing a lot of stuff that was kind of on my own, which the Ryman Arts program really helped me with that as well, with, FAFSA days, portfolio review days, introducing us to, just the general college application process. So while my family was supportive, they didn't quite know how to get me there entirely. So, when I said architecture, they said, well, that's great,
And so you start working at an architecture firm,
Mm-hmm.
but it didn't turn out exactly as you'd imagined.
Yeah, I mean, when you're, I think any artist or designer, when you're working in school, it's sort of this pure creativity. And it's not quite so much. You're a little disenchanted when you get out into the real world, and you're kind of, you get pigeonholed in a sense into doing one thing at one firm for a really long time. So, I didn't want to draw handrail details all day. It was sort of that wasn't, it was a little bit lackluster for me, and it wasn't really as creative as I wanted to be in my career.
So you pivoted a little bit
Yeah.
to a lighting design company where you are now.
Right.
So talk about what you do now.
So currently I'm the creative director for Justice Design Group here in Los Angeles, and we are a architectural decorative lighting manufacturer. And I got through that, through being on the design side of lighting, of specifying lighting, and working with local manufacturers to get these lights actually manufactured. I kind of ended up getting headhunted really by the owner of one of the manufacturers to go work for him. And so in that process, I ended up learning everything about product design and product engineering and manufacturing and part sourcing, and working with local artisans and getting beautiful arts and crafts pieces made, and how learning myself how I could create that into a lighting product. And now I design an entire line for a company, and as a creative director I manage the brand. So I oversee the product, I oversee the marketing strategies, the brand management, trade shows, all of everything creative that would normally fall under a creative umbrella, I manage for the company.
So in that work, do you consider yourself an artist?
Oh, absolutely. In anything that I start doing, it's just sort of, my first reaction is to pick up a pencil and to draw it. So if I'm doing a catalog layout, I'll pick up a pencil and I'll start sketching my layout. If I'm doing, if I'm designing a light, I'll pick up a pencil and I'll start designing a light. And that's true for, not only for me that I work in manufacturing, but it's true for lots of my colleagues in the creative fields, whether they're animators or, shoe designers, car designers, filmmakers. Everybody starts, they all consider themselves artists. They start with a pen and a paper and an idea, and it transforms itself.
And it sounds like it was really key having that seed planted at school, and having that program. Do you think you would have found that path?
Oh, absolutely not. No. I mean, it's one of those things where you can say that program, that teacher that signed me up for this program, and that program that took that seed and watered it, that it changed my life. It changed the course of my life, and definitely the direction of my career. Absolutely.
What's your advice to young artists who have maybe just gotten that seed planted, and they're not sure how it will grow yet?
Well, I think it's important to look around you and to pay attention to things. I mean, in our everyday lives, everything that we touch and everything that we wear, our shoes, our handbags, the movies we watch, the television shows we see, the commercials that are animated, everything has a designer, everything has an artist, a team of artists that's working behind it. So find something that that interests you, of course, that you can be passionate about, because I think that's an important goal to have, is to make your passion your work. I think that's a great goal to have. So to take something that you find interesting and figure out how you can make a living out of it. And there's plenty of ways to do that. So I took, an art form that I liked, architecture, and, even though that kind of didn't really work out for me, it wasn't everything I thought it was going to be, I used that and the tools that I learned there, and I just transformed it into something else.
What about this wasn't exactly your situation, you had the support of your family,
yeah.
But to a skeptical parent, what would your message be?
I think to a skeptical parent, I think it's important to note that everything's difficult. Every career is difficult, and then even more importantly is to realize that there are careers in the arts, that you don't need to be a starving artist. For me, I think that's all of the artists and artistic people that I know, almost none of them are struggling. They're arts educators. They're screen printers. They make T-shirts. They're tattoo artists. There's tons. There's just so many different things that a creative person can do that you can make a career out of. And I think that it's important for the parents, to realize that it is a myth. That there are plenty of ways that you can make money and really have quite lucrative careers in the arts.
Great, and I asked you this ahead of time, but
Yes.
how much are you making?
I mean, in my position as creative director and some side jobs that I do in architecture and interior design, I make about $80,000 a year plus bonus. So I'm 30. I'm doing okay. It's not too bad. It's a good living. I'm doing well.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Of course.
Adriana Rambula.
Thank you for having me.
And we're going to bring up two more guests in a moment.
Sounds good.
But we've been talking to some other people. Thank you so much for sharing your story. But, well, you can hang out a second. But we also talked to some other artists or people who maybe had considered careers in the arts around town and put together this little montage here.
My name is Ebony. I live in the San Gabriel Valley area.
Yeah, my name is Eric, and I'm from Alhambra, California.
Have I ever thought about a career in the arts? Yes, I have.
I did consider a career in the arts for a while.
However, I think it was at a time when parents didn't encourage their children to pursue a career in the arts.
I think there was kind of not really a clear path for me, partly because I don't think I had a community of artists around me.
They thought you either had to be a doctor or a veterinarian, in my case, in order to be successful and make money.
Hi, my name's John. I live in the Valley.
Hi, I'm Tracy Cheney, and I live in Lakeview Terrace.
For me, the arts has been a salvation for me. I was not a great student. I had a learning disability as a kid, and theater had always been a draw for me.
I didn't have art when I was a kid, and I taught myself how to draw in 5th grade using the comics and doing the school newspaper. And it took me until I was 25 to decide to go to art school.
Fortunately, in college, I discovered that actually I could make a career out of it, or at least point me in a direction of a career in that.
And you know, you have this idea that you have to be good to take an art class. You wouldn't think about that if you were taking French, but you feel like you have to do that because art is so connected to your soul.
My name is Sinemi Diaz. I'm a senior at Millikan High School, and I'm in AP Studio Art at the moment. And I know a lot of really talented artists, like they are extremely talented. And I'll ask them, are you interested in pursuing an art career? And they'll tell me that art is their passion, but that they're gonna be doctors, for example. So even though that's their passion, they don't pursue it for like a fear of not being successful. There was like a time where I was actually not gonna major in art, even though I knew I wanted to major in art. I've done like my research, and I think that there are a lot of opportunities in the art field. Even though it is a little bit difficult, it's all about the communication skills that you have. So you just have to like snatch opportunities as soon as they're placed in front of you.
So on stage with me now, I know you all saw them come up here. It wasn't like it was but I thought maybe you'd be distracted by the audio and ta-da. Anyway, on stage with me now, Rachel Moore, president of the Music Center. She's also the former executive director of the American Ballet Theater and a former dancer in that company. Also, Randy Lavender, he's the provost of the Otis College of Art and Design, and he's been on the faculty there for a really long time. Also, and both of you are arts administrators now, but practicing artists, in the past. So, thank you so much for being here. And I wanted to play that little montage we heard because it touched on so many different things. Family pressure, the idea of having a network of artists around you to show you a path, some of the societal ideas, overcoming your fears. And I loved that comment about French. You wouldn't think about needing to be good to take a French class. You're going to go and you're going to learn something. So I wanted to start off with both of you just asking you, what's your reaction, just, a quick reaction when you hear the term starving artist? Rachel, I'll start with you.
Well, it conjures up visions of, 18th century France and somebody in the garret, and it's really unfair both to the field and to the artists. I just don't think that, first of all, you want to be having a long and sustained career as an artist, and you need to figure out how you're not starving all the time, because that if you are, you probably aren't going to last long, and then we are denied your extraordinary gifts. And so it's important for society that you figure it out, and it's also important for you. You want to have a balanced, long existence. So I think it does it marginalizes what artists can do and are part of society, and I just don't think it's fair.
Randy?
What comes to mind is partly the myth that is long-standing, that there's not lots of ways to make a living in the arts, and I think that is a myth, and we'll be talking about that more, which I'm glad for. And also what we heard in the montage there was some references to self-efficacy about art. And so the notion of the talent myth, which goes along with the starving artist myth, and the idea that self-talk talks people out of it, as well as societal talk and parent talk and lots of other kinds, that raises doubt. And those doubts lead people out of the arts who might well have passion and drive and talent and would do well in the arts.
Yeah, so we're going to talk a lot more about that. I also just wanted to hear a little bit more about you. When did you first consider a career in the arts, Randy?
I was a fortunate person in that, well, actually, it may have not been that fortunate, but it was to me. It was very early on, I started taking art classes as a child. So I was just an artsy-fartsy kid, and I really enjoyed playing in the garage and mucking with material and exploring and experimenting. And I came from an arts family. There was lots of tolerance and openness. And I went to college straight away as a ceramics major and took it from there.
Great. Rachel?
Well, I started training as a professional ballet dancer when I was 11, which is a little old in that world, if you can believe it. I think that I started to think about it as a career, something I wanted to do, probably when I was 14 or 15, and I grew up in Davis and trained in Sacramento, and for me to go to New York every summer and seeing these other dancers and what the world could be, I trained both at the school connected with New York City Ballet and with American Ballet Theater, and that I was considered talented enough to actually go and be scholarshiped in these programs gave me a sense that maybe this was something I could do. My parents, both are economists. I think it was very scary for them, and I don't think that they really knew how they ended up with a ballet dancer in the gene pool. But they also knew I was so driven and so passionate that I was going to go to New York and try to become a dancer regardless. I mean, my drive was that strong, and they were fearful, especially because back when I was training, people didn't go back to college after 18, 19. It was non-traditional students were not welcomed into most universities at that time, and so it felt like there was just this single window when you could go. And as a ballet dancer, you have to, in the most part, go into a company when you're 17, 18, 19, because if you're 22 after college, you're not competitive with the 17, 18, 19-year-olds that are looking to get into a company. So you really need to postpone your college career. But I think that my drive was sparked early on, and it was actually this incredible gift because in high school, I knew what I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And, and other people were like, well, I don't know. And I was like, I'm getting out of this cow town, and I'm going to dance.
It's something that Adriana touched on earlier, which is just this special kind of baggage that the arts have. And then a lot of industries, it's hard. It's hard. I wanted to be a journalist from when I was a little child, but it's also hard to get started in journalism. It's also hard to get started in a lot of, also doctors. You have to go to school forever. There are a lot of hurdles in a lot of different industries. Randy, what do you think it is about the arts in terms of that perception?
Well, I think part of the baggage is associated with the competitiveness. There is this self-talk that we referred to as to, am I good enough? And that's a lot of risk associated with a career of this kind. So in a lot of ways, maybe the baggage is the fact that it's not a prescribed pathway. It's not easy to say, like someone who's a business major and they know that there's a certain kind of set vision they can rely on maybe, or in other fields. But with the arts, in some ways, you're crafting not only in your medium, but you're also creating a career. And those careers really vary a great deal, and they're personal and they're individual. So while there are lots of opportunities, which we'll talk about, that have been measured even, it's not that easy for young people to really see and understand ahead of time exactly what they will be doing or even what they might want to be doing. And we have careers in the arts to be invented. So students studying today will be doing things that we don't even know about yet. And so it's hard for them, as you can imagine, to think, what will I be doing when none of us can really tell them and they can't tell themselves. So that's a form of baggage for sure. It's very competitive, like any profession.
Do you feel like that shifted since you have been at Otis for so long? Do you feel like that narrative is changing in terms of maybe, it's not a bad thing necessarily that you have to be creative in a creative work, career.
Well, there are certainly two changes that come to mind when you mention the many decades that I've been involved at Otis and with college art altogether. One is the generation effect. Peer generational characteristics have really moved in such a way as to, in the 80s when we were teaching in the school, or when I graduated from college with a ceramics degree in 1979, we were all majoring in art as a kind of unwitting vow of poverty in a way. I mean, we weren't thinking that we needed a job, and well, we knew we would need one, but we weren't worrying so much about what it would be, because there was a kind of faith in the passion for the medium, and the opportunity to distinguish oneself had promise in itself. But that was generational to a degree. Today, young people enter colleges and leave high schools and enter high schools with very direct job motivations, and so that's a change. And also all the different media now and all the different career opportunities that do exist, fortunately, satisfy these students. And we have lots and lots of ways to talk about and show and demonstrate career pathways for young people in the arts.
Yeah, it seems just from being in the education world just earlier and earlier, the career focus, starting in kindergarten even, having a major in middle school, it's a lot. So sometimes when I talk to young people about their majors, I'm like, are you talking about a college major or are you something else? It's unclear. So speaking of those pathways, Rachel, you came out with a book just last year, The Artist's Compass. And so you talk about your personal experience as a dancer moving to the administrative side, a lot of advice on networking, on the financial aspects of it. What was it that inspired you to put this together?
Well, over the years, having run ballet schools and ballet companies and actually a classical music school, I've spent a lot of time working with kids and their parents about their pathway. And people don't understand how the field works. That makes them more fearful. And I think that, I also wanted, from my own experience, I moved to New York when I was right out of high school. I didn't know what a union was. I didn't know what a W-2 form was. I didn't know any of that stuff, and that was scary. And I think that the first thing is to understand that there's a reason it's, showbiz has the biz in it. It's a business, and understanding that there's a business piece to it and that you can understand it and learn it. And so I really hoped to demystify the field for people who are just starting out, and also give some guidance about thinking about how do you define success, because part of this baggage is, especially in the performing arts, if you're not a star, you haven't had success, and if you're not a star, you can't have a meaningful career in the arts, and that's completely not true. In fact, I would say the opposite is true. As a young artist or a more seasoned artist, you want to really define what is special about your art form to you and why your voice is relevant to other people. And that can manifest itself in lots of different ways and lots of different mediums, and you can have a truly meaningful career based on that. But if your goal is just to have your name in lights, that's much scarier and much more narrow, and frankly not as fulfilling as an artistic endeavor. So I think it was helping folks along understand that, and also to really understand that artists are, by and large, really, really smart and have a lot of skills that they don't give themselves credit for. When I was at Boston Ballet, I used to go around to chambers of commerce and say, hire a dancer. And I would get these looks like, hire a dancer. And think about it. These people understand deadlines. The show must go on. They understand how to work singularly in groups. They take correction well. They problem solve. All of these are tools and skills that are transferable to all sorts of fields, as well as different forms of the arts. And so you walk away with this experience and this education, and you're really a very powerful future employee or entrepreneur. You have these skills.
So, I guess the flip side of this, and it's interesting that you brought up the whole idea of fame, Because I think that that is also a real big part of this, is that we see, like La La Land, for example, was, when I was watching it, I was like, wow, this event, it's just perfect. It's all coming together. But we see storylines like that, the trying to make it, questioning your worth, and then hitting it big, hitting it really big. That really seems wrapped up in success. Is there a way to, or do you feel like there's been success in separating the idea of fame and success in the arts?
I think it's unfortunately incredibly entwined. But what's interesting to me for my book, I talked to, the Sigourney Weaver and Long Long and also some major dancers, and no matter how far you rise and have this fame, there's self-doubts and you think somebody's better than you. And, it was really striking to me that Sigourney Weaver was talking about how great Meryl Streep is. And I was like, are you kidding me? You've had an incredible career. This is ridiculous. And similarly, I talked to some major professional ballet dancers, and they're like, oh, I was a principal dancer with the American Ballet Theater and danced with the Bolshoi and the Royal, but I wasn't Mikhail Baryshnikov. And it's like, really? And it's speaking to these artists about that, they also understood that they were missing out on some of the joy of their field, that they didn't relish what they had at that moment. And so I think the fame thing may entice people into the field, but I don't know that it's really great for the field.
And in your book, you have a lot of practical advice and some pretty, not harsh, but just honest facts. I wrote down one of the quotes: "If you don't think you have something special to bring to your art, I'd say you probably shouldn't be doing this."
Absolutely. You have to think that you have a special voice, because if you don't believe it, nobody else is going to believe it. And, dealing in the performing arts, you go to all these auditions, and it's not necessarily the best technician or the most beautiful human being that gets the job. It's when a director is looking out at the auditioners, they want that spark. They want somebody who believes, that has something special to say. And if you don't have it, nobody else will believe it.
And you also present 2 questions that artists should ask themselves. So how will you define success as an artist, and what is your unique brand? Talk a little bit more about the brand.
And it comes from, the brand needs to be an outgrowth of the earlier question of what do you have that's special in your voice to bring, and why do you think it's relevant? And everything needs to grow from that, because a brand isn't something that you just sort of plop on like a pair of pants. It's something that has to be an outgrowth of who you are, how you see yourself in relative to your peers, to what is your competitive set, and it should infuse every single thing you do. How you present yourself on Facebook, how you interact with people, it all should be tied together synergistically, but it won't feel authentic unless it comes from your heart, from what you truly believe you have to bring to the table. Because if it's just artifice, and people can spot a phony at 50 paces, and that's not a good brand.
I think in talking about the fame factor, some of it has to do with education and exposure. We all know actors because we see them on TV. We know directors. There are a lot of award shows, acknowledging these different roles, and some of the other roles in the arts. Adriana, for example, I'd never thought about that aspect of lighting. That's really cool. So you all have on your seats a very extensive list of different arts careers and different pathways, and we wanted to put that out just to help people understand that it's a long list. There's a lot of stuff on there, and that is all part of the Otis report, which comes from the Otis College of Art and Design. And Randy, I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about the findings. You also have a sheet there that goes over some of the major findings, and there will be another edition of the report coming out next month, right? Well, this is still March, in May. But yeah, let's talk about some of the major findings. So in LA County, 18% of wage and salary employment was in this creative economy. So let's talk about the creative economy. What's going on?
Right. The creative economy is the portion of the economy within any given region that is attributable either by direct or indirect or induced jobs as assessed by economics analysts and economists. And this is something that has been very, very shocking and very wonderful to get the results of, because when the first report was conducted some years ago, it revealed what many of us and those of us who had commissioned the report at the college, Otis College of Art and Design, suspected based on our anecdotal evidence and knowledge from our alumni success and the rates at which we saw students graduating and then being absorbed by creative industries. The question became, what is the creative economy? How big is it? What is it made of? And what are its parts? And how does it work? And so we undertook the study.
It's interesting to see. The last event I did was about data in terms of arts enrollment, but it's so interesting to see more data being brought into the arts world as the counting is carrying. So it's really nice. I hear it a lot when I am talking to arts educators. Different people representing organizations. They'll bring up the Otis report. They'll bring up the 1 in 6 jobs in LA County is linked to the arts. So it seems like part of the reason I wanted to do this event is to get it out wider, but it's interesting to see the kind of data angle brought in.
Yes, the Los Angeles County Development Corporation was commissioned to produce the first report, and they've been the data experts behind the report. And these economists have developed great methods for assessing the way these activities and these professions manifest in the economy. And we've just been astounded by the numbers, as you can see on your handout, 744,000 jobs in 2015 attributable to the creative professions just in the Los Angeles and Orange County region. And for the state, of course, it's over twice that, including heavy sectors like entertainment, which encompasses so many various media and activities, but also fashion and publishing, web and print are big sectors.
And then we also have the graphic here, which I think is really cool just to see how all the colors break down. But let's see. So entertainment is the biggest one. Then we have fashion, furniture and decorative arts, architecture, publishing and printing, visual arts and performing, toys. I like to see that on there. I know Otis has a toy program.
Yeah, so
right?
Otis College has only two in the country BFA programs for toy design specifically. So students go into these, what happen to be giant Fortune 500 corporations now that are making, play and in all forms, product placement in films and toys that children play with, and lots of other kinds of product, software and everything else. So yeah, it's a huge industry, and who knew? Actually, we all know, but who knew how much of an opportunity there was for people to learn that trade and that skill and those critical thinking skills, and to be part of children's development through creative work that they can do professionally.
And when we talk about the direct and indirect jobs, some of these are kind of, it could be the services that are brought in to support the entertainment. So like a shoot, the catering that's brought in to support a shoot, right? That's how some of these.
Right, and I think that falls into the category of induced jobs.
Induced.
So if you're shooting Big Little Lies on the streets of Los Angeles, then there's catering trucks and all kinds of other services and things associated with these activities, and they're jobs that otherwise might not be as sustainable or lasting or at the scale that they are as a result of the creative activities. And so there's just lots and lots of people, activities, and things that happen because of the creative professions, as well as the star of the movie, kind
Right.
of things. And not everybody will be starring in La La Land, but lots of people worked on it, and there's lots of other films being made, and there's lots of advertising and graphics, and there's just, you can't even imagine how many things trickle down from for instance, a feature film. There's somebody scoring it, there's orchestras performing scores, it's infinite in a way.
Absolutely. Rachel, in your role at the Music Center, how do you view, having this large role, the responsibility of kind of changing the narrative around the arts?
Well, I think there's a number of narratives that are being changed. I think for the individual artist, I think it's really understanding that you're part of a broader network, and we have this wonderful program called Spotlight, which is for high school kids from San Diego all the way up to Santa Barbara. Kids can audition, and it's really about different disciplines going through master classes and what have you, but a big piece of it is introducing the kids and their parents to the huge opportunities for jobs there are in the arts, and that there's jobs, also great union jobs backstage. You don't have to be front on the stage to have a great job. And so a big piece of what we believe the Spotlight program is to prepare, open their eyes to all the breadth of the arts world. And I also think that as the arts, we really start to re-examine that it's not just this siloed dance versus opera versus choral music versus, that's not where the arts are going in this world. It's really between the disciplines. The future is this mashup. You look at Hamilton, it's pulling from all these different places. That's where the arts are going. And so changing the narrative that you have to do a specific art form in essentially a palace on a hill is not the future. It's more about how we bring all these arts together and to create something new and different that is relevant to yourself, to your community, and specifically to Los Angeles, which is incredibly diverse. And so I think that narrative is changing and is going to change as we move forward.
Randy, as provost at Otis, you're kind of in charge of all the different department heads, and I think that there still is, if we're talking about stigmas, going to art school could be a decision that some people may question. How do you advise the department heads about advising students about careers in arts?
Oh, that's interesting.
I mean, they're already there, so it's a different audience.
Right. Well, the students are there, but how do we? So I guess the first thing I would say about advising department heads is anyone who's in education, perhaps some of you in the audience might be. We know that you don't advise department heads; you listen to department heads. But that's a form of advising, because by listening you can synthesize and then repeat. No, but you can actually you can help. Facilitative leadership is the best form. So, but we do really work with these myths and these questions, doubts, these struggles, even with our student population. So as an independent College of Art and Design, we have students who are very passionate, very committed. Their identities are very solidly formed around the pursuit of these media. And they're very gratified by their work. They work very hard. It is quite competitive, but we are focused very much, as you had said, also on the transdisciplinary nature of the way the arts are forming and the way the media are crossing and the way that disciplines and training can overlap and the way students can migrate across and between art and design fields. And we're also focusing a lot on entrepreneurialism and on professional development and skill sets specifically oriented toward helping people not just distinguish themselves with a great portfolio and skills of the medium, but also of the workplace and of the professional life and how to help themselves get out and be seen and be heard and understood and to be critically thinking and speaking well about what they do so that they can be distinguishing themselves in those ways too.
I think, in thinking about what is specific to arts fields in terms of challenges is really the idea of rejection. The idea, and this could happen, in any field. You're applying for jobs and you're not hearing back, but the auditioning process, the portfolio, the fact that you are pouring something from yourself, your creative expression, your brand into something that someone who is in charge, may not like. And that seems like, especially in talking to parents, I remember a specific conversation where it was really a mother who was really concerned about her daughter, facing that rejection. And I mean, that's real. That's that's a real thing. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think rejection is a piece of life all over, and I'm not so sure that kids are necessarily prepared for that when they go into the real world, because regardless of your field, you're going to get feedback, some of it positive, some of it negative, and you're going to get the job or not get the job, and there's lots of reasons why you may get the job or not get the job. I think that in terms of the performing arts, sometimes people need to understand that not getting the job isn't because you weren't really good, it's that you didn't fit what they needed for that specific ballet, opera. If they need, a short soubrette and you're a tall male, that's not going to cut it. You're not going to get that job. So there are sort of those specific needs. But I also think that it goes back to that core. If you really believe that you have a special voice, that you can endure that. And I used to tell parents, specifically in dance, talk to your kid after high school and say, let's take 2 years and you do the best you can and see where you end up. Because it really should be the market that tells your kid that they're not going to make it, not you as a parent preemptively keeping them out of it. They should have the chance to try to soar and understand how they fit in the world rather than always feeling regretful that they couldn't, they were never given the shot. And if you don't succeed in the way you thought in 2 years, think about pivoting a little about how can I take what I care about and what my passions are in a new direction. And the great thing about how the arts are now, with all the social media and different avenues to create your own work, you can transform what you were doing into something completely different and still find joy and meaning.
Anything you wanted to add to that, Randy?
No, I think the rejection question for the art room kid, like I was, it's less, sort of difficult perhaps as it is for a performing artist. But there really is this question of how people are willing to put themselves out and how people do in the face of, how they persist in the face of setbacks. And so that we know that this is, educational psychologists have shown that this is actually the thing that makes people successful or not. And so we try in our educational programming not only to foster the skills around the media that we teach, but to really help the internal development of each student around the persistence in the face of setbacks and self-efficacy and attribution of control and lots of other fancy psychological educational things. But they go to the empowerment of the individual to do well and to pick up and get going again, even when there are struggles and there are strengths and weaknesses in works that we create. And we need to understand the weaknesses to tackle them, conquer them, and overcome them. And we need to leverage and exploit the strengths into something that's more visible and more distinguishing. And that's just something that can be simply taught. It's not hard.
Yeah. Back to the education. Back to arts education.
Exactly. Education is very helpful in life. I'll just tell you that. It certainly is in the arts.
Well, in just a few minutes here, I want to open up our Q&A, and anyone who has questions for Rachel or Randy is welcome to come up to Liz there. Sorry, I could hardly see you. And we're going to have a microphone for you. And also, if you are an artist or considered being an artist and would like to share an obstacle or how you overcame, we'd also be interested in hearing stories. We are going to have some time to mingle afterwards, so if you're from an organization or something, we'll definitely have time to talk after that, but want to hear questions and stories to start out here. But on a final note to you, when we were talking about the rejection, sometimes, so we heard that montage earlier from people around town, and it strikes me, sometimes I fill in hosting the Frame and often listen to that show. That's our KPCC's Arts and Entertainment show. And there are a lot of A-list guests on there, a lot of famous people on there. And they are also saying the same things about failure, about rejection, same fears, overcoming that. And so I was just really struck by hearing that from people of that caliber because it's like, whoa, everyone's thinking about this. So we put together this little montage that we're going to play now from some voices that you may recognize. I will tell you who they are after. But,
I committed to being an actor, whether that meant I was going to share an apartment with 3 other actors the rest of my life, then that's what I was willing to do. And I think that's what anyone going into the arts really has to embrace, is that risk-taking. Well, it's a little scary, but I'm going to dive in and see what this is all about.
I love when people go, have you ever had a bad set? Have you ever bombed? You're like, I'm sorry. I mean, I literally can't drill down deep enough to find a single time I bombed that I can reflect on for you, because there have been so many, but you cannot get funny. You cannot get funny without bombing.
My father's a mathematician. He didn't feel that being an actor was a suitable way to spend your life. But if I can't prove to him that I have something to contribute, then how am I going to handle when the New York Times says I stink? The life in the arts is a constant carousel of rejection. I always liken it to baseball. If you can bat .250 or something, you're a professional. If 1 in 4 goes well, you're doing great.
Things go in and out of style, and I think a lot of times people get a million no's before somebody says yes, and when that happens, then they're all the rage, and then that's the style. I don't want people to confuse no's with value. They're not related.
Now what scares me is not going for it. I think that scares me more than failing. I only really learned that through things in life and also professionally, contributing to things that weren't necessarily outwardly like a huge success. I guess true failure is not giving it my all now. I mean, I can't control anything else.
okay, so does everyone know there's a prize? No, I'm just kidding. So that was Bryan Cranston, Aisha Tyler, Ethan Hawke, Jessica Williams, and Emma Stone. So people that you heard of, I don't really need to give their bios. You probably know those names. So it's just really interesting to hear. I think that may be what is unique about the arts, or maybe it's just that they have more of a spotlight, to talk about it. We go to those people more. We go to them to pick their brains, to do those interviews, where we may not be asking the doctors or scientists like those introspective questions. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I actually think
that was not a question.
Yeah, I actually think that, to your point, that if you were to talk to people who are in the sciences or other fields about risk and their risk-taking, and sometimes you put your career in risk by pursuing a path of inquiry, or taking a chance in a new job is a risky endeavor. So I think that risk is taking risks and managing risk and having the setbacks and continuing going, I think is true regardless. And I think you're right, it's probably not highlighted as much, because in the arts, certainly, the notion that you go out on the Broadway stage and you are a star, or you fail and it ends up in the New York Times the next day and everybody knows that you were a star or a failure, it seems much more public. But I think that for people who are very committed to their fields, they know whether they've been successful or bombed among their peers.
Yeah.
And it may not be in the New York Times, but it still feels very public to them.
Right. A private crisis versus a public crisis. Randy, did you have any thoughts on that?
I think lots of disciplines are very competitive and difficult, and people face, risks in pursuing them, and there's always the sense of what if I fail and that kind of thing. But I think in the arts there maybe is a little bit more baggage, just to come back to your first thought, because you're making something that's personal, and you're making something that you're putting forward that comes from a place of original thought, and you're positing yourself as a prospect. And so for it not to seem to be working is kind of hurtful, in addition to being just objectively, you're getting a 60% on a test or whatever. But this is a critique or an audition or a performance or a review, and there's a public aspect perhaps, and so there's a little bit of shaming that can be implied. But good critics and good directors and people, good educators who are working with people pursuing these things understand that and have empathy and are supportive. And so it's not inherently terrible, it's just that there are experiences that can come along because of the personal nature of these endeavors.
And I think that that's where identifying the people that give you feedback and how you apply it to yourself is really important. So many directors will say, don't read reviews because they have a different job than I do as a director relative to a performer. And if you have a teacher, you have mentors, you have people that you respect their opinion and they know that they've got your back, that they want you to be better than you are today, that's critical. And I think of this story, there's this extraordinary modern dance choreographer by the name of Twyla Tharp. And she used to have a fellow by the name of Jerome Robbins, who is also a major choreographer, come in and look at her work before it went too far. And invariably, he would come in, he was not a warm and fuzzy guy, and he would rip it to shreds. And the story is, Twyla would go off and cry and disappear for a week, and then she would come back, and then she would restructure the dance, and it was ultimately much better. And she grew from that process, but the piece was also better. But she chose somebody who was extremely good and whose opinion she valued. So she's not, it's not about the reviewer, it's about somebody who's really knowledgeable and caring about excellence that she listened to.
Yeah. On that idea of community, we'll go to our audience questions in a moment, but we have a question from Twitter from Nate Zeisler of the Colburn School downtown. Suggestions for artists to find community in an LA region that is sprawling. How can you find that community in this area? I know we all had trouble getting here in the traffic, just getting here to talk about this.
Yeah. I think the performing arts are probably different than the visual arts in terms of you take classes, you figure out where the studios are, you build a network of peers. I think that it's building, and certainly if you've gone to college or conservatory, you should really hang on to the people that you went through school with because they'll probably be around your entire career in some way, shape, or form, and they have resources. So, but also try to identify people who might be a few years beyond where you are in your journey because they will also have ideas and thoughts. You have to put yourself out there and get to know people in an authentic and lovely way. But I think it's really about trying to find like-minded people in settings where art happens.
Yeah, that's definitely true for art and design. And there are, the old adage is, be going to all of the activities. I mean, it's an ironic thing because lots of the work that we do is solitary work in a studio setting, or in teams, but you're trying to build community, and one of the ways is to go and view and share and participate in and celebrate your peers, successes. And so openings and exhibitions and people's debuts and whatnot, it is something that you just have to get out and really make sure that you're immersing yourself because over-isolation can be debilitating.
Okay, great. Let's go to a question in the audience here. And we're going to be taking questions here, so if you want to kind of line up in that area.
Hi, my name is Kimanti, and I ran my own art business for about 10 years. I got into the business because I am an artist, but found out it's 90% about running a business and not what I have an interest in or what I was interested in. I closed my business about 2 years ago and got a job as a counselor. And now at 40, how can I get into the creative industry jobs that you guys are kind of talking about at the beginning without a resume or industry experience?
That's an interesting question. Rachel, do you want to take? I know,
Well,
I know you've had to make several pivots in your life.
Yeah. I think it's identifying sort of what kind of creative art you want to be involved with, and maybe it's volunteering in an organization that does that kind of work, so you start seeing how it works and how it functions, and maybe if it's a small organization, join the board so you get an understanding of what's going on, and maybe there's some opportunities for you to do work, do community-based work. I think it's just, you have to start getting out there and just doing and demonstrating. I don't think that you are going to be able to, nobody's going to give you permission. You just have to start creating on your own and letting the world know about it.
Yeah, I'm not sure which medium you were involved in, but I'm thinking back to my ceramics career, and I know that if you were feeling like you described that, you had this relationship with your work and you were creating and inventing and making, and then you got into trying to market things, and you did, but it became so intensive on the business side that it took over, and then you lost touch or that relationship with that medium and that work and that design or craft or making was suffering. So I think a couple of things. One would be get back into continuing education, which is not expensive, and it puts you back in a setting where there's critique, like-minded people, everyone's making, and the whole point is that that's what we're focusing on. We're taking time out of our lives, and everybody's together, and we're working, and it's class. I mean, it's a tremendously powerful thing, even just to do one more now, to circle back after the experience you've had. And secondly, I'd look into getting a partner, because someone needs to take that business and work with you in managing it so that you can be liberated again to go back to the design or the craft or the art making that led you in the first place to have the wonderful things that you tried to put out in the marketplace.
And there are so many different nonprofits in this area. I mean, there may be a way to fuse the art and the counseling together. Even though there are so many, I don't know. We should talk more. We should talk more after. Thank you so much. Next.
Hi, my name is Stephanie, and I'm a visual artist, and I'm a gallery teacher at LACMA, as well as a fundraiser at Everybody Dance. And so kind of on the issue about pivoting your career and that interdisciplinary between different art forms, because I'm a result of that myself, not being a dancer, but learning how to talk about it. What is your advice for, especially because I work with a lot of young kids, about the fact that you can train to be a visual artist or a dancer, but you have to keep an open mind that you might end up at these different institutions that give you these broader opportunities?
Well, I think that your comment about keeping an open mind is actually critical for any artist, regardless of where you've landed, because the world's changing so rapidly, and how technology is being used in all the different arts forms is changing the landscape. And so I think it's really a mindset of being curious about the world. Even if you're a dancer, go to museums, go see theater, read poetry, go to the Grand Tetons, experience all these different things, because you're going to bring that back into your art form and you'll have a richer artistic product. But I think that being curious about the world will keep you growing as an artist and keep you relevant.
Ditto. No, it's the similar themes, and so I think the idea of trying to find new ways to inspire new opportunities that allow you to carry at the same time, what you've got and what you know and what you've mastered forward, but also add to it and just augment these skills with a wider and wider net that allows you to do more and more different things.
One thing I hear a lot at schools that either have large arts programs or arts-focused high schools is just reinforcing that these skills will help you in life no matter where you end up. Particularly I feel like I hear that most in kind of theater and dance. That you could be a doctor and you'll have better bedside manner. And that these artistic skills can really help you in all aspects of your life.
I would add to that something that we're very cognizant of is that when corporate CEOs in this country are asked, and this is published quite commonly in Studio Thinking, for instance, by Hetland and Winner, and the Rise of the Creative Class by Richard Florida, what are the most important attributes in people who you seek for your company? And in all kinds of positions and all kinds of roles. And singularly, the thing that rises the most is creative problem solvers. And in fact, creativity itself is the most prized and cherished attribute today in the Western world of people and in the workforce. So, the ways that, and I guess if I could see beyond the lights here, I'd ask you to raise your hands, but I won't become a teacher now. But how many of you might be involved in something administrative or something business-like, or in positions where you're doing things that weren't necessarily what you thought you'd be doing long ago, and when you were working as an artist or as a dancer or studying a creative discipline, but you know how much that creative discipline and your experience in it and your mastery of it then transfers to so much professional activity and so much job, workforce kind of interplay that you perform. It's true that these things really go straight to almost every kind of work.
Great. Next question.
Well, that's a perfect segue to my comment, which is that I was raised believing that I was going to become an actress and a performer. I grew up in New York City, I did theater, and I ended up, life happened, I had a family, and I needed a more stable and consistent income. But because I continued to nurture those skills and those passions, I ended up being able to use my work in a nonprofit organization to create public service announcements, to be the public face of the West Side Food Bank, the nonprofit I work for. I ended up getting invited to have my own cable television show interviewing other nonprofits about the work that they do. And that's because I continued to nurture my passion for performing, for being in front of the camera, for producing, even though it wasn't necessarily the work I was doing. It's kind of a build it and they will come thing. If you nurture the skills and you keep your passion alive, the opportunities will come to you, even when it looks like it may not be that way. I mean, had I continued as an actress, the chances of me hosting and producing 30 episodes of my own television show, not so much. But in the nonprofit world, I get to be that star that I couldn't be on Broadway or in other venues. So I just would urge people to continue to nurture their passion, even if the field that they're in isn't necessarily the field that they thought they would end up in.
Great, thank you.
And I would say very few people end up in the field that they thought they were going to when they were in high school.
I mean, just in general, right? That's
In
that's
general,
the, that's
totally.
the thing. That's the thing about the arts. It's like so much kind of defensive nature there, but it's like a lot of people, how many aspiring firemen as children, or not everyone's doing that.
Well, I'm not an aspiring fireman, I can tell you that. Hi, my name is Josh Grayson. I am a classical pianist, and I actually, I'm an alumnus of Juilliard pre-college program.
Oh, wow.
I'm now just about finishing up my PhD in music history at USC. I'm trying to put together, kind of an idea for where to go from here. My defense is scheduled for sometime in the coming month.
Oh.
So I was thinking, the academic career path is not the same that it used to be, where, it used to be that as soon as you graduated with a PhD in pretty much anything, you could become a professor, and if you were unlucky, you would go to some very cold place, a very small town where you don't want to be. Today, it's more like you become adjunct professors and you teach maybe 1 or 2 courses at about 4 different schools. That doesn't necessarily appeal to me all that much. I'm interested in, say, teaching, 1 or 2 courses somewhere and kind of combining a lot of different things. But I'm especially interested in combining my academic career with my musical career. I'm really interested in maintaining my performance, maintaining my piano, at the same time understanding the music I play and helping other people understand the music that I play. So I was wondering, what advice could you give to somebody like me in my position?
Randy, sounds like a good question for you.
I'm not expert enough. I would defer to Rachel.
Well, I think, I think the world of academia has absolutely changed over the last 40 years. And I would actually say every year I go to Juilliard and talk to the graduating seniors, and they don't have the same path either. You don't go to Juilliard and get into an orchestra the way you used to, or a dance company. That's gone. And so one does need to be more entrepreneurial and really understand what you want, what is your mission, how do you want to change the world, and then how can you make that happen in these various ways of combining the arts and whatever you're doing. I don't know exactly enough about what your focus is, but if it's really wanting to do a lot of educating or performing. But I think it's really keeping an open mind about lots of different possibilities. And there's this great quote by Einstein that says, chance favors the prepared mind. And I think that that's really true, that if you keep you have all these, wonderful chops, and keeping your eyes open of how you can use what you're passionate about in some different way, or create your own combinations. You may need to write a book or start a blog or whatever, depending on how you want to take, what is your mission in terms of your work. You may have to make it yourself. That's the beauty of today's world, and that's the scary part of today's world.
I would add that in terms of adjunct teaching and whatnot, we really appreciate very much our adjunct faculty, and we know that all of the faculty are professionally active in the fields, and they teach not as a primary way of making a living often, but as an augmentative way. And they often, as I did during my part-time teaching career, found great value toward my own practice and my own theory and my own writing and painting and making, because the teaching keeps your mind active, and when you're forced to articulate through teaching, you're reinforcing the parts of your mind that really are kind of looking constantly and deeply at what it is. It's a metacognitive phenomenon that you're gaining in depth of understanding of what it is you're doing in your own practice. So to do both, we value very much in our college. I know all colleges, there are at least 60 of them that offer arts degrees within an hour's driving distance of downtown Los Angeles. So this is a very higher education rich part of the world, and there must be a way to do what you're doing and to continue the furthering of your theory and practice in writing and composing, while perhaps teaching a class, once a year more, or whatever it might be, and that can be enriching for your work as well as in helping to put together what becomes your living and how you make it.
Yeah, I guess if we talked about rejection as one of the kind of unique aspects of an arts career, but another aspect is the kind of more freelance nature, that you're not going to be in a job on a direct path necessarily, that you may be cobbling together different things, and you have to be creative in that way. I guess, do you have advice for people who are concerned about that aspect of it, of the uncertainty aspect of it?
Well, I think that to go to Randy's point, you can, if you're a modern dancer or an actor, you can find some stable part-time jobs, whether it's teaching at a university or in the dance world, having regular teaching gig, or as a musician, being able to have private students as a way of having something that's solid. The vast majority of artists have multiple jobs. That the census actually even shows that the number who have one union job in an orchestra or a ballet company or an opera company is so small. So that is, being entrepreneurial is part of the new world of the arts. And and there are people for whom that won't work for them. If you can't manage that level of change, if you can't manage, if it's really uncomfortable or it destroys you to not have something that's more stable, you really need to step back and think about whether this is the right direction for you. And that's okay. You can have your creative outlets in other ways. Not everybody has to take that path. I think you have to look in deep about what your strengths and weaknesses are, and what makes you comfortable, because if you're not comfortable if you're really a risk averse, you probably shouldn't be a performing artist. And if you are risk averse and you try to go down that path, it's not going to be sustainable in the long run, because you're going to be miserable.
Next question.
Hi, I'm Rita Sultanian. I'm the Director of Career Services, and I manage career and entrepreneurship programs at California Institute of the Arts. And we've been talking a lot about those additional life skills that artists need to sort of sustain their life as well as their career path, to make sort of all those pieces work together. And Randy, you mentioned a lot of the psychological phenomenon associated with rejection and being able to present yourself and use your transferable skills in the working world. I'm curious to hear your perspectives on what is the role of educational institutions in helping to teach and train artists in these areas. And also with the rising number of millennials in the workplace, I'm also curious what your thoughts are on whether or not that training is appropriate even in work and organizational environments as well, since many of these students don't really gain that along the way and they're often searching for these types of answers.
So I understand the first part of your question better than the second, but maybe you can clarify that the role that yesterday in the New York Times there was a little article about higher education in the arts, and it was talking about the idea that in colleges today, inflexibility is the most useful thing, and one of the things we're finding, and that this reporter was discussing, was that it's necessary to lead people on sequential pathways of learning that bring them through series of courses and contact hours and experiences that are planned and programmed and understood in a sequential way. And the whole sort of older model of like just have a lot of electives and let people do their choosing as they might. Students are frozen by choice today often, and they really cherish having someone advise and say, this is the way we've constructed this, and there are choices within it, but it's still a thing that you're going through. And it's been understood as a sequential series of courses and levels, and cumulative constraints and prompts and projects and activities and critiques and readings, and this is what programmatic education can do. And the article also happened to mention that 54% greater incomes come to those with bachelor's degrees, and this is just a fact. And so one of the roles that education plays is empowering people to be adept, well-informed makers and to be critical thinkers who can solve problems and define tracks and directions in media, but also speak about it, write about it, engage in the discourse, contribute to this dialogue about what art is and what art can be and what design does and who it's talking to and how things evolve. And to be contributing to that is something that we're teaching, you're teaching, all the great secondary and primary educators that are engaging students in arts and that are preparing students for colleges like ours, we cherish as well, because at every level, my daughter teaches first grade, and this is just something that's so endemic in the human experience. And if it's not pursued early in a serious way as a discipline, it's not just recreation and expression. It's also a discipline. It's also a profession. So there's no reason why programs, degrees, courses of study, pathways of focused activity and guided activity shouldn't be undertaken. So I'm not sure what the second part of your question was, but the role of education, I think of it as vital.
Great. Okay, next question.
Hi, my name is Imani, and I'm currently an 8th grade student who is about to attend a performing arts high school. And so all my life I've really been interested in the arts, but I never knew exactly what I wanted to pursue. And not too long ago, actually last year, I finally found my love, my passion for theater or dramatic arts, theater and dramatic arts. And so what I wanted to ask you directly is, what advice do you have for me or people like me who are just getting started, who have a vision of a long road ahead of them, and what I can take with me throughout the years?
I just have to say that I met Imani, and thank you for coming. I met her a few months ago, December last year, I don't know, when she was auditioning for LACHSA, the Los Angeles County High School for the Arts, and she got in, and anyway, now she's here. That's all I wanted to say.
Excellent. Yeah. I think that first you need to get your toolkit as in your discipline honed, and so really, take the technique classes very seriously and be mindful of all of that, but don't narrowly focus on that. Also really explore the world outside of you. Take some classes that are that will music history, dance history, theater, history of theater, so you understand the context and the other pieces of the art forms that we're going to influence what you are when you are creating art. You know, whether it's understanding lighting design or scenic design, all of these things, understanding more will make you better able to really soar as a performer. And then this rich, all the experiences you can. Don't just go to see drama. Go see dance, go listen to music, go to the museum, and experience it all, because you're going to learn different things from the different, while the art forms are certainly cross-disciplinary, if there's a specific focus on one or another, you'll definitely learn something different from a dance performance than you would a theatrical performance versus going and listening to Wagner. Even if it feels weird or strange, or I don't think I'm going to like that, that's okay. Make yourself go and experience it. I think that you'll learn a lot from that. So keeping your mind open is probably the most important thing to as you move forward in your education.
Anything you want to add?
I would only add that another mainstay of success in life, unfortunately, is non-specific social skills. And anyone as articulate, self-defined, and poised as you are is going to be successful. But that said, do seek higher education, preferably through the master's degree, in your chosen field, and you'll be surrounded by distinguished faculty and people who are professionally active, and do as Rachel says, and see everything, experience everything you possibly can, and be you, and it's going to work.
Great. Did we have any more questions from the audience? Okay. Well, do I see something? No. One last question for you. So, you know, I wanted to call this event "The Myth of the Starving Artist" because I thought that would be a kind of a catchy name. But I just wanted to clarify that we think that this is really a myth. Like we should drop it.
Well,
we should strike the term.
I mean, I think the starving artist piece is an extreme. You know, there are definitely fields, whether you go into the arts or you're an educator, that aren't as well paid as if you're a hedge fund guy. You know, there are choices you make, you know, in being a journalist, whether it's print or radio. You follow your passions. So I think that there's certainly a continuum on the sort of financial success. So I think that the starving artist, it's for most, it's not going to be the most lucrative choice you could make, but that's not really what most artists care about in life. It's about creating something special or beautiful for the world that has your unique imprint. But you have to be not stupid about it either. You know, you need to be thoughtful, not get yourself, I mean, one of the questions that I get around how much debt should I take on when I'm in college and graduate school, and there are lots of places to get wonderful educations that maybe you're not going to walk out with $150,000 worth of student debt, because that's going to limit your choices in how you want to be an artist. And I actually think artists generally are really good with a buck. They're really thoughtful. They're told, oh, you don't know anything about business, you don't know how to take care of your own finances. That's not true. People are creative thinkers. You can figure it out, but you have to be strategic. Some gigs you're going to have to do in order to pay the bills, and some gigs you're going to do because they provide you the next step in your growth as an artist. But you know, I think this sort of broad-brushed starving artist is, as I said at the beginning, unfair.
Okay, so drop it. Complicate.
Yeah.
It's complicated.
It's complicated.
But
I'm in the drop it camp. I would say that it's an unfortunate and yes, a myth. Certainly with people, you know, raising children and seeing their children's passions sometimes evolve and tilt toward various art forms. And I wish that people in that situation could know more about, for instance, what we know from the Otis report on the creative economy, which is that The creative professions today are just that. They're professions, and they're like dentistry and accounting and other professions, and they're competitive, and people fail, people succeed. There's all grades, there's all kinds, there's all statuses. But there is absolutely no reason that's rational why anyone should say, I shouldn't pursue an art form as a way of life because I can't make a living. It's absolute bull. There's 744,000 jobs that were measured around this activity in 2015, and I guarantee you in 2016 there will be even more.
So tell a friend, take your materials, we'll post them online as well, and be armed with this evidence. Thank you so much for coming out this evening. I'd like to thank our guests here, and also a special thanks to the Penthouse of NoHo for having us and KPCC's in-person team. Thank you all for coming. To Randy Lavender, to Rachel Moore, and Adriana Rambula. Thank you all here in the audience, and please feel free to stay after and talk, mingle, be creative, network, all the skills that we learned tonight, and thank you so much.